But I want to talk about the Pistons. That's the headliner. So the Pistons offseason, in my mind, is kind of having a little bit of a concerning start. So, as far as players you're losing, and we'll get to one of these guys at the end, you lose out on Dennis Schroeder. He goes to Sacramento. You lose out on Tim Hardaway Jr. I believe he ends up in Denver. I believe he ends up in Denver. Let me actually double check. I'm pretty sure I still have that notification here. Yep, he ends up with Denver. And you bring back Paul Reed on a 2-year, $11 million deal. I like Paul Reed. I thought he played pretty well in the playoffs, all things considered, but he really didn't play a whole lot for you. And Isaiah Stewart is just him, but better. So I was a little shocked that we ended up bringing him back, but I guess, they like his fit. They like his grittiness. So, okay, fine. Pistons also signed Karis LeVert to a 2-year, $29 million deal. Karis LeVert, who has one skill, and that is shoot the three ball, albeit not as well as a guy that we will talk about in just a little bit. I'm not going to say his name just yet. We'll get to it. But Karis LeVert comes in. He's going to be one of your 3-point specialists. And then literally like maybe an hour or so ago, Duncan Robinson on a sign and trade. He gets signed and dealt to Detroit for Simone Fontecchio. I think it's a massive upgrade from Fontecchio's standpoint because Simone Fontecchio was absolutely terrible. So definitely like the improvement on that end. And that move definitely, since I made the stream and then he gets Duncan Robinson gets sent to the Pistons. So I was like, okay, actually that does make things a little bit better so far for the offseason. However, there is a name that I have yet to name here, who is on the thumbnail of this video, of the show, and that is Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley had, I believe it was a 3-year, $40 million deal, whatever the money was. He had a 3-year deal coming his way after a spectacular season. Helped us get to the playoffs, helped us win playoff games. Was on the team. Although his last move in that series was dropping a pass that could have been a 3-point shot for a tie game, but that's fine. That's fine. The thing that gets me is Malik Beasley is now under investigation by the federal government, so you're never a good sign, for gambling. Now, usually, players are, I believe, allowed to gamble outside of, I actually don't know what the rules are in the NBA, but in the NFL, I remember this, you can't gamble within team facilities. But it should go without saying that when we're talking about players in a particular league, you are not allowed to gamble in said league because, and it might come as a shock to some people, you have knowledge that is not necessarily public. So let's say Malik Beasley, he's best friends with Tyrese Halliburton. I don't know who he is, but he has access to other stars in the league. I'm sure he could DM them and they would respond to him and give him information. And he knows agents and stuff like that. He can learn about, this guy's actually playing hurt. Bet the under on his over-under. The Vegas is hoping people see that and they're like, oh, please. That's an easy over. This guy's a 20 points a game player, and they're putting the over-under at 9.5. Give me the over. You get that advantage. Furthermore, you obviously cannot bet on games in which you are involved in because whether you know it or not, even if you want to say, he might be betting on himself to score more points. Even if you're betting on yourself, it changes the game. This is a very good point that I believe it was, and that's baseball. The YouTuber made this point about Pete Rose. Whether you're betting for or against yourself, you're going to change the game even in a non-conscious level. For example, let's say Malik Beasley says, okay, my over-under for tonight's game is 13.5. Well, I'm obviously going to get more than that. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to do better than 13.5. I'm going to get 14 points. Well, now, because he knows he wants to win that bet, he might take some shots that he otherwise wouldn't have taken. He might drive to the basket and try to draw a foul that he might otherwise not have done. And that could result in an injury to the player delivering the foul. It could end up in an injury to him. Or it could just end up in a game not going the way it's supposed to go because Malik Beasley is too focused on hitting his over instead of actually making the competent and the well-reasoned and the right play in the moment, which might be, okay, I have an open look, but let me lob it up to Jalen Duren, or let me pass the ball over to Schroeder and let him take the open look. Whatever the case might be. The point is, you can't gamble in games in the NBA if you're in the NBA. And you certainly can't gamble in games that you're doing. And this should be a very easy to understand thing. However, time after time after time, athletes seem to fall into this. I mean, last year was it Jonte Porter, the guy on Toronto? He was a nobody, and now he's banned from the league. Never going to play in the NBA ever again. And, people could say, oh, well, Malik Beasley, he almost won Sixth Man of the Year. He's a beloved figure. He's not going to get made. Really? You think if he was betting on games where he was involved, like if he was betting on over-unders or point spreads or whatever the case might be, you think the NBA cares that he almost won Sixth Man of the Year? He's not LeBron James. He's not Steph Curry. He's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's not one of these guys that are real money makers for the league. Fine player, but he's not even been an all-star. like he is a nobody in the eye of the NBA. And very well, it is possible that he gets banned. Now, I want to just make a rant here a little bit because a lot of people will say, oh my gosh, how could you be so stupid gambling? Oh my gosh, it sucks. It's so annoying. These players can't follow the rules. You might have just screwed us. And obviously, as a Pistons fan, this very well sets a lot of our offseason into turmoil, where now it's like, okay, we're not only replacing, Dennis Schroeder or Tim Hardaway Jr., now we got to replace our best three-point shooter. One of the veteran leaders on the team. What are we going to do? Is that changing our offseason strategy? I don't know. We're not making a big-time move. I mean, Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson, fine players. Not moving the needle anywhere from where you were, especially given the loss of Malik Beasley. You would have had those guys with Malik Beasley. Maybe you say it's an improvement. But to get back to what I was originally trying to say, we really just need to go back to gambling being illegal. I'm not. This is not a political show. Okay, this is not me. Pontificating about my own particular views of government, my own views of society and what it should look like. All that. We're not. That's not what the show is for. But gambling has gotten out of hand. Like, we are clearly not a responsible enough society that we can't handle it. Players know for a fact this is against the rule. This is the golden rule of sports. You cannot gamble on your own league. Period. End of story. You can't do it. And they can't resist. It's like, to make a potentially a different example, it's like fraternizing with let's say the ladies of the company, right? It's usually frowned upon to, ask people out in the workplace. But people do it and they get in trouble, and sometimes there's harassment and sometimes people get uncomfortable, but people do it. Why? I don't know. It's like our brains shut off when we see flashy lights and money rewards. That's what happens. And the same is true, or that is primarily what's happening with these gambling. Like, it would be one thing if you want to say, okay, maybe we don't make it illegal. Okay. Can we at least eliminate all of the sports gambling apps? I mean, guys, it's ridiculous. Let me just see how many I can name off the top of my head that I wouldn't have known about 5-6 years ago. DraftKings, Fanatics, FanDuel, ESPN Bet, BetMGM, BetRivers. Oh my gosh, there's another one. I can't think of. There's hundreds of these. There's a bazillion of these. Bet Online, I think, is another one. Like, there's hundreds upon hundreds of these things. You think that's not going to fuel a bad action? Like, All you're doing in every single game, look, the Pistons play on a network that is owned by FanDuel Sports. Like, the Pistons play on FanDuel Sports Detroit. Every game, every Pistons game has a same game parlay before the game that is announced and that is talked about during the game. And you will see odds in the FanDuel bar at the bottom of the screen where the scoreboard is. You will see, betting odds for such and such award or for such and such team to win the Super Bowl or whatever. It is a never-ending just supply of betting stuff and gambling ads. And that's not to mention, if you go on any sports YouTube show or listen to any sports talk radio, you are going to get inundated with sports gambling ads or just articles upon articles filled with with all these gambling stats. I bet you there's probably going to be an article in the next few days. Here are the latest odds from Vegas on the NBA Finals teams based on the first few days of the offseason. Who cares? I mean, did people need this 20, 30 years ago to enjoy sports? No. Has the game gotten so stale to people? Has the game itself lost all interest that the only way for people to enjoy it is to put money on it? And people aren't betting small amounts of money. I mean, they put the gambling problem hotline at the end of all these commercials. They do that for liability reasons. And frankly, they're doing it because they know that people are getting addicted and people are burning money that they really should not have any business spending on anything, let alone on gambling. So, yeah, the Malik Beasley thing and the Pistons offseason, look, that's its own thing. But this gambling stuff has really just got to stop. I'm just tired of it. I think, frankly, it's a bad idea. I wouldn't advise people to get into it. And I'm going to go on the record here, and you can hold this up if I ever become a hypocrite. If I ever get big enough to where there are sponsors, I am not taking any sponsors that are gambling companies. I'm not going to do it. I don't care about Underdog Fantasy or Underdog, any of that. I don't care about BetMGM or FanDuel or DraftKings. Any of y'all who are listening, do not send me an email asking me to advertise for you. I'm not going to do it. You already spend all that money advertising on my television set. I don't need you in my own content. Gotcha? All right. So, Pistons off season, as I finish my rant on gambling, Pistons off season is what it is. I'll say this. I'm a little nervous, but I'm not freaking out. The rest of the East is getting a little spooky, all things considered. But last offseason, it was kind of the sneaky moves. It was the quieter moves. It was, bringing, I mentioned him, Malik Beasley. It was bringing in Malik Beasley or Tim Hardaway Jr. And maybe that is, maybe it's addition by subtraction. Maybe you get better because you lose Simone Fontecchio and you bring in Duncan Robinson. Maybe you get better because you get to play Jaden Ivey instead of Tim Hardaway Jr. in the starting five role. I don't know. And maybe you see development from Duren or Asar or Holland, whatever the case might be. Either way, it is a little bit of a concern. I'm a little antsy, all right? I'm not freaking out. I'm not saying the offseason is going terribly because I just think that's flatly wrong. But I'd like to see a little bit more. I'd like to see maybe 2 or 3 more moves, 2 or 3 more guys, or a big name like a Devin Booker. That would be as far as I'm willing to go. Hey, YouTube, if you like clips like that, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We've got live shows every Tuesday night. Hope to see you there.